Hi everyone, good evening. I am Ramya, Product Marketing Manager at Wolters Kluwer, and I'm really delighted to have you all joining us for this collaborative session on clinical research methodology and tips for publishing in medical research. So this is a joint session hosted by Wolters Kluwer and Cactus Communications. So before we introduce you to the speaker, I would like to take a few moments to introduce you to the Wolters Kluwer as well as the products and resources that we offer for medical education, research, clinical practice, and also for the scholarly publication. So Wolters Kluwer, as you can see on the slide, is a 5.6 billion company serving in more than 180 plus countries, provides trusted clinical technology, wide range of online medical resources, databases, and evidence-based solutions that drive effective decision-making and outcome across the healthcare. So next slide, please. So in Wolters Kluwer, we majorly offer two platforms, that is Ovid and Lippincott Solutions, and both are at the forefront of transforming not only the medical education, but also the healthcare practices, which deliver up-to-date research and support the doctors, nurses, students, and even the faculty members. So Wolters Kluwer, in Wolters Kluwer, as I just mentioned, the Ovid, which is the one of the largest medical research platform, which has been there for more than 30 years now, provides evidence-based resources that support the doctors to prepare them for their professional life. So on the right-hand side, you can see under this Ovid platform, we provide content solutions, workflow solutions, and even the medical education and nursing solutions. So if I talk about the content solution, through Ovid platform, you can access to hundreds and millions of evidence-based medical and nursing textbooks. To be precise, I would say we have more than 4,000 plus peer-reviewed journals. We have 12,000 plus ebooks. We also have more than 100 plus indexing and abstracting databases. So if I talk about the journals, we have like from the number of 4,000, nearly 370 plus are essential Lippincott research journals. We have more than 110 plus Lippincott proprietary journals. And yes, I would also like to highlight that we also have the titles from the premier associations like JBS, we have ASCO journals, we have ASN journals, and yes, most importantly, we have a flagship title, which is the New England Journal of Medicine under the Ovid purview. Not only the New England Journal of Medicine, but we also have all the titles of the NEJM group, whether it is NEJM Journal Watch, NEJM Catalyst, NEJM Evidence, NEJM AI. So we are the exclusive providers of NEJM group of journals in India and abroad as well. Apart from that, we have workflow solutions like Ovid Discovery Services, Ovid Synthesis that actually help the healthcare professionals to curate, organize, and disseminate evidence-based projects so that it helps in standardization and collaboration of evidence-based projects within an institute. Apart from that, as you can see on the slide, we also do have medical education and nursing solutions like Eklund's Anatomy of Eklund's Video Atlas of Human Anatomy, BioDigital Human, Grant's Atlas of Human Anatomy, and also the nursing Lippincott procedures and clinical decision tools for nurses such as Lippincott Advisor. So now I would like to welcome our speaker for the day, Dr. Sunaina Singh. So Dr. So Dr. Sunaina is a seasoned expert in academic communication and scholarly publication. Dr. Sunaina is a freelance STEM copy editor with a remarkable portfolio, as she has edited over 1,500 manuscripts for researchers, PhD students, and is also a prominent author service company such as Cactus. She also serves as an academic trainer, leading customized workshops at top universities and research institutes at like CMC Vellore, IIT Madras, and BHU, to name few. In addition, she's a talented content writer, crafting educational articles for platforms like Editage Insights, Researcher Life, and PaperPal, where she helps in demystifying the publication process and elevate the scientific communication. So now please join me in giving a warm welcome to our speaker of the day, Dr. Sunaina. Over to you, Dr. Sunaina.
Thank you so much, Ramya. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And welcome everybody to today's session. It's really a privilege for me to be conducting this on behalf of Wolters Kluwer as well as Cactus. I'll tell you that Cactus for over 2 decades has been providing some really amazing solutions for academics and academics across disciplines, but also life sciences, medicine, pharmaceutical sciences, medical devices, to name a few. And their products, services, and solutions include those that can help authors and researchers like you overcome language barriers, write better, choose the right journal, and be able to be more impactful as researchers. So without further ado, let's dive right into today's topic on clinical research methodology. So very briefly, of course, all the attendees here would be very well aware of what clinical research is and why it is important. It's so essential for public health, for to re-establish public trust in clinical trial data. There's a lot of mistrust and suspicion with which the general public looks upon clinical data. So the aim is to make it more accessible, more transparent, and more reliable and reproducible. So when you design a research study, some of you are probably just at the helm of starting a new study, or some of you are right in the midst of it. This is the workflow. You form a question, you perform background research, you create a hypothesis, then you design an experiment, collect data, analyze the results, draw conclusions, and most importantly, communicate the results. If you don't publish and communicate your results, the work is considered not really done. So let's now move from knowledge gap to research question. What are those various situations or circumstances that would, spark a research question? It could be patterns of outcomes or problems regarding a current existing treatment. It could be questions about safety or applicability of recent technologies or drugs. The potential of technologies in other fields that may be applicable in your field. It could also mean comparison of treatments with what is currently practiced. Sometimes discussions with colleagues and at conferences may also spark interest and lead you to a specific research question. Most importantly, a very deep dive into the literature can also help you stumble upon a research question. And in the medical field, a very unusual case could also lead to a research question. What is a good research question? You have to really frame it well, and you need to cover these various points. So FINER is feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. So is your research question, does it cover all these? There's also the PICOT format of a research question. So when you're framing your question, understand what is the population, what is the intervention, comparison, outcome, and time frame. So PICOT. For prognostic studies, it is PPO, that's patients, prognostic factors, and outcomes. Now, from your question, you move to your objectives. How do you define those objectives that pinpoint the major focus of your research? And you have to break down that research focus into these objectives. Your objectives need to be SMART. And it's not just a meaningless acronym, it actually means something that is S for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. So whatever it cannot be something that is very unfeasible or takes too long or it is irrelevant. It has to be all of these things to make it SMART objectives. So research design, when you are going to be testing a hypothesis, you need to design your research in a certain way. So it is the pattern of how your research will be conducted in terms of the research subjects, intervention methods, and evaluation period. What are the key points in this research design. What is your question or the hypothesis? Why is the study important, or the significance of the study, and how? How are you going to do it? So that is the crux of your research design. In clinical studies broadly, there are two categories: the observational design and the experimental or interventional design. The key differences between these two are that a researcher has control over most variables in experimental or interventional studies. From the name, you can understand that you're creating an intervention, you're using an intervention. So, but in an observational design, it basically just observes subjects without controlling any variables. Observational studies are useful for identifying associations, but they are prone to bias and confounding. So in that way, a better source of evidence is the experimental design. They are the gold standard for establishing causality. So let's take a look at the different types of observational studies. Basically, observational studies aim to find out what happens to people under different conditions or treatments. So the research team observes the participants, but they don't influence the treatments. Participants are not put into treatment groups. Broadly, these are divided into cohort studies, case control studies, and cross-sectional studies. Let me remind you that within each study type, also there are further subtypes, but that will be too much to cover in just 1 hour. So broadly, I'll be describing each type of study with an example of an actual published study published in a Lippincott journal. So very kindly, as Wolters Kluwer has volunteered to conduct this session, I'm using their journals as examples. And these journals, I should mention, most of these open access journals, mega journals, they publish high quality research and they're peer reviewed. So these are journals you could consider for your next paper. So the first type of observational study, cohort study, a group of subjects are followed over time to define the incidence or investigate potential causes of a condition. They can be prospective, so you choose a sample group and measure characteristics over a period of time to predict outcomes. They can also be retrospective, except that all the data collection follow-up has happened in the past. So these kind of studies can only be possible if the data are available. So just as an example of a cohort study, you can see this published in Medicine. Factors influencing hospital length of stay in febrile neutropenia, and it's a retrospective cohort study. So this is what a typical title of such a paper would look like. Second are cross-sectional studies. So they are similar to cohort studies, except whatever measurements are taken, it is made at one point in time. There is no follow-up. So it is to describe variables and distribution patterns at any given time. So in a way, this is faster and cheaper because there is no follow-up or waiting time for the outcome. Yet another example in this journal, Medicine, retrospective evaluation of active tuberculosis cases in terms of chemoprophylaxis indication of cross-sectional study. So there was no follow-up that was done. These patients were studied at one given point in time. Third, case control studies. Here, two groups of people are examined for the same outcome: the cases or population of people with the disease, and the control or population of people without that particular disease. Here, the aim is to compare the prevalence of risk factors in subjects with the disease, that is cases, versus those without the disease or control. So here's an example of another Lippincott journal, Clinical and Translational Gastroenterology. And this case control study is on diet-dependent and diet-independent hemorrhagical alterations in celiac disease. Now coming to experimental or interventional studies. These studies evaluate the effect of an intervention or treatment. And you can think of a number of types of interventions. It could be a behavior modification, a new drug, or a combination or a new way to use an existing drug, a surgical procedure, a medical device, any other way that can improve quality of life, or it could also be in terms of detection or different kinds of scans or procedures for diagnostics. All these come under these kind of experimental studies. Again, there are types and types. There are pilot studies and feasibility studies that are preliminary kind of studies to understand, are these kind of studies even feasible to conduct. Screening trials with just a small group of patients. And now these treatment trials which are run in stages or phases. And early phase trials is to see whether the safety and side effects of the treatment, to understand those. And then as it progresses in the flow, the later phase trials see if it works better than current treatment. There are randomized clinical trials, basket trials, which is one drug for more than one type of disease, umbrella trials, which is more than one drug for one disease, and then multi-arm, multi-stage trials. So multiple drugs or multiple treatments in one trial. So very briefly, these phases, if you have to look at, of experimental studies, first to fourth. Phase 1 is with up to 20 to 100 volunteers. These are first in human studies. So this has come after the screening and pilot studies that may have been done in animals or in vitro. So the first in human studies in a small group of patients. Phase 2 is to evaluate the efficacy and further assess safety, determine the optimal dose, monitor short-term side effects. This would be in a slightly larger group of patients. And at every stage, there are bodies to oversee these trials. It's very important. You cannot conduct a trial without the permission or ethical clearance from these bodies. Phase 3, it confirms the efficacy and adverse reactions compared with standard treatments, collect data for regulatory approval. And the final phase is more of like a post-marketing surveillance. And there may be some rare or long-term side effects that you might get to know, and assess the effectiveness in the general population. And this is in a more large and diverse patient population. So let's take a look at the important organizations in India. So the Central Drug Standard Control Organization, or CDSCO, is a regulatory authority that oversees clinical trials and looks after approvals and inspections. And the Drugs Controller General of India, that is DCGI, is also known as the Central Licensing Authority, heads the CDSCO. So this is very recent, which is why I put it on the slide, that effective from April of this year, the new Drugs and Clinical Trials Amendment Rules requires registration of all clinical research organizations with the DCGI before conducting trials or any bioavailability or bioequivalence studies. Next is the CTRI, the Clinical Trials Registry of India, and it's an online public record system, and it is affiliated with the WHO because data from the CTRI is regularly transferred to WHO's International Clinical Trials Registry platform. So all these records are maintained, that is the study title, investigators, sponsors, patient population, and regulatory clearance. Now, what is the role? To enhance transparency, accountability, and accessibility in clinical research, to avoid any kind of malpractice or unethical misconduct. Trial registration in CTRI has been made mandatory. So even post-marketing surveillance studies, bioavailability studies, even studies as a part of a PG thesis have to be registered in the CTRI. This is very important. In fact, recently someone came up to me with a paper that they wanted to edit, and they were having trouble publishing the paper because they had not received the required trial registration, and every journal was rejecting it. So editors of major Indian biomedical journals have announced that unregistered trials will not be accepted for publication. So it will be such a waste. So even before the enrollment of the first participant, you must register your trial. So as the last bullet point here, all clinical trials involving human participants must be registered before the enrollment of the first participant. I've just taken a screenshot of the CTRI website for you to understand that, there's nothing to be scared of. It's not a very overwhelming procedure. There's even a tutorial, and all the information needed for your registration is available over there. And why is this prospective registration necessary? Because it ensures that there will not be any positive outcome bias or selective reporting of research findings. If you don't register, if you've not decided on your research question, and later on, depending on the outcomes, you can't go back and modify them. So this prevents that. Next, after CTRI, we have the ethics committees or institutional review boards. So they review research protocols, ensuring informed consent and protecting vulnerable populations, etc. There are two types, institutional ECs and independent ECs. Institutional are located within institutions and independent function independently. And they all have a chairperson, medical experts, legal experts, social scientists, etc. So they ensure the ethics of any clinical trial or study involving humans. So now, how do you start a clinical trial? You develop a clinical trial protocol. So I think the previous session covered clinical trial protocols. Then you need to get your ethical committee approval, so submit the necessary documents for review and approval at every site. Then you need approval from the CDSCO. After all that is clear, register your trial with CTRI, and then you begin the trial at every site and ensuring good clinical practice and maintain regular oversight and reporting. At every stage, safety and compliance and ethics need to be monitored. Recruitment is a very important part of starting a clinical trial. How do you identify potential participants? Advertising, outreach, referrals, patient registries, and organizations. Then you perform pre-screening and in-depth screening for eligibility, that is inclusion and exclusion criteria. Very important to obtain informed consent after clearly explaining everything, the possible risks, benefits, purpose, and rights of participants. Ensure that the participants sign an informed consent form that they are volunteering to do this. At every stage, these must be documented. And of course, we just spoke about all the registrations and approvals. And then once a participant is deemed eligible and provides informed consent, that is when they are formally considered enrolled in the trial. What happens is often participants drop out and things like that happen. So it is important for the clinicians to ensure strategies to retain the participants, provide clear communication, provide patient support. All this is important in retention of participants so that your trial doesn't fail. Blinding, there are three types. Single blind is when the participants are unaware of the treatment. Double blind is participants and researchers are unaware. And triple blind is where participants, researchers, and data analysis are all unaware of the treatment assignment. So depending on the design that you choose, triple blind would be most reliable because there's the least chance of any kind of bias, but it's also difficult to execute. Determining population size, a lot of these details will be covered in the biostatistics session later, but briefly, it is calculated based on the primary endpoint, expected effect size, statistical power, and significance. When you define the patient population, you have to make sure you are clear about the inclusion criteria and the exclusion criteria, that is comorbidities, pregnancy, any other concomitant medications, or previous participation in similar trials. Human participation, the ethics of conducting research in humans, you of course are aware of respect, beneficence, and non-maleficence. When you use tissues and body fluids, ensure consent and confidentiality, and of course, explain to them the risks and costs and benefits. Very important to have clear communication between researcher and volunteer before starting the study and during the study. So throughout, they must understand every aspect of the clinical trial and voluntarily agree to it. There are some reporting guidelines that ensure the quality and transparency of health research. So I would highly recommend that you visit this website called Equator, and there are different guidelines for different study types. So here we are talking about observational studies and experimental studies. So STROBE is for observational studies. There is a checklist for each type of observational study, and you should make sure that you tick all the boxes for high transparency of your research. For randomized trials, the guidelines are called CONSORT. Again, there is a checklist, expanded checklist, a diagram, so statements and explanations of all those things that you need to cover if you want trial. Such guidelines and checklists enhance quality, completeness, and transparency. Now, planning your publication. From the ancient times, every clinician, every doctor has a history of writing. So even as far back as Hippocrates' time, he wrote case notes that read like proto-stories. Avicenna, in the medieval period, also combined medical texts with certain philosophical treatises. Much later in the Renaissance era, also this lady, Trotula of Salerno, also wrote these pioneering medicine texts. So writing and reading publications is a part of every clinician's journey. So let's dive into what all comprises this publication plan. You need to document who the authors are going to be, the data and the timing, how much time is needed to collect data, and how much time do you expect your manuscript to get finalized and submitted. Which journals? Are you looking at an open access journal? Are you looking at a peer-reviewed journal? What are their submission deadlines? All that will be covering how to select a journal. What is the status of your manuscript, and fundings, approvals, trial registrations, all these you need to plan well in advance. You need to decide the article type. So primary literature would be articles that require original research. So original research papers or case studies. Secondary literature, they don't involve original research but are based on other work. So systematic reviews, meta-analysis, etc. So this is the pyramid of scientific evidence. I'm sure you all are well aware, but this is really, really detailed. If you see, the highest level of evidence is provided by umbrella reviews, which is a review of reviews. So the non-human studies, from in vitro to editorials and things, they're at the bottom of the pyramid. Then as you go up, the evidence keeps getting better and better, from descriptive to analytic to observational, experimental, and then secondary research. So I'll just give you a moment to look at this slide. I think it's very beautifully depicted. I've even provided you the source where to look at this. All right. Very quickly, elements of style in academic writing. Use the active voice. There's a myth that we need to always use the passive voice. That's not true. Like DNA extraction was performed, you can better say it as be extracted DNA. Don't be vague. Use strong verbs. Provide actual exact quantities, etc. Try to be as concise as possible. Omit needless words and vary sentence length. Use clear headings. Back your claims with data or sources, that is citations and references. Use clear, concise, and compelling language. Tailor language and detail according to your readers. Avoid jargon and complex sentences. Present data without bias. Revise thoroughly. And these 3 books that I've indicated over here, they are good resources for understanding how to write medical papers better. So first, original article, and I'll also be talking about review articles. The actual steps go like this. You start with preparing your figures and tables. Then you write your methods. That is what you have at hand. Then your results, discussion, introduction, abstract, title, and keywords. But the structure of the manuscript looks like this. It's also called IMRAD. So you have your abstract, of course, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Sometimes the methods appear after the discussion. So let's take a look at the first section. The introduction introduces the research area, explains the research gap and problem, and it includes some literature review, previous research, and explains what the proposed research will address and how. So it kind of is like an hourglass. It starts very broad and then comes down to the aims. You begin with general information, narrow the focus to the specific problem, and then state your study rationale and aims. So here I'm showing the example of a paper published in Medicine, Causal Association of Cathepsins and Endometriosis, a Mendelian randomization study. So let's take a look at how their introduction looks like. There's no need to read everything, but I'm just going to point out that it begins with the problem. That endometriosis is a complex and debilitating condition characterized by these symptoms, etc., etc. Then it gives some context. It talks about cathepsins, which they're trying to study in relation to endometriosis. And this continues with previous studies that have been conducted on cathepsins in endometriosis or other conditions. Then it points out the study gap, that there is lack of sufficient research exploring the causal relationship between these two. And somewhere here comes the aims. By utilizing this approach, which is explained, we aim to provide stronger evidence for causal relationship between these two things. So this is what, through this example, I tried to show you how it flows. Methods carefully review. This is the section where reviewers will spend some time to see whether you've provided details of ethics, your design, your sampling criteria and selection, and procedure, measures used, etc., etc. Also, method, the figures are a very important part of your methods. Again, on the same paper, it provides, as you can see, the very first section is the study design. It's a two-sample Mendelian randomization analysis, so it provides the design and assumptions. Then it provides the data sources. It could be, samples and all those details of genetic material sources, etc. Then details of how the data analysis was conducted, as well as approvals. So it provides that the study protocols were approved by the local ethics committees and participants provided informed consent. Just an example of a diagram that they have provided. So this gives an overview of the design of the analysis that was conducted. Results will present your data and that is relevant to your research question. It is typically written in the past tense. Again, there'll be figures, tables, text, and don't interpret your studies. You simply need to present your studies here. So over here, you can see that there are 3 subsections and each mirrors the methods. There's an example of a figure that they have provided. Now moving on to the discussion. This discusses what the results mean. So what are your main findings? And are they in concordance with previous data? Are they contradictory? What recommendations for further exploration, strengths and limitations, etc. And towards the end, there will be 1, maybe 2 paragraphs for the conclusions. So state the importance of your study for further research. So don't just end very abruptly, and don't even add any new evidence here. Here is where you're trying to tie up everything. So what is the importance? How do we look ahead? And don't exaggerate anything. Conclude with a realistic view, how you have added to the current body of knowledge. So here are examples from that same paper. So the discussion, it begins with findings that are specific to that study. Then it starts broadening as it discusses those specific findings with previous studies, and it keeps getting broader. Then it talks about limitations, future directions, and then the conclusion gives a sense of completion. On the basis of our study, cathepsin H increases the risk of overall endometriosis of the ovary, of the peritoneum, etc., etc. So overall endometriosis may lead to increased cathepsin H levels. So very, very crisp and concise conclusion. Then is the abstract. So you don't write the abstract first. You write that after you have completed your paper. Why? Because it is a summary of the essence of the entire manuscript. However, that is the first section that will be read by readers. So you need to make a good impression. It should address everything from research rationale, significance, aims, methods, outcomes, implications. So all that, it's like a mini paper, and use the relevant keywords. Similarly, the title is a mini summary, even for the small version of your study. It is your first attempt at attracting the reader's attention. Again, write it at the end of your study. Keep it short. There may be a word limit or a character limit. Make it active. So determining, identifying, to prevent, to control. And sometimes you need not mention very general words like a study of or an exploration. Make it more self-explanatory. Avoid uncommon abbreviations and acronyms. So for that same study, I've given the title, which is a very, very clear and concise title. Causal association of cathepsins and endometriosis from Mendelian randomization study. So here this needed to be clarified. This is an unstructured abstract. In some journals, you may have seen that even an abstract will have sections like background, objectives, methods, results. You have to follow whatever the journal has recommended. Review articles are also a very important part of the repertoire of every research author. Review articles help you get more citations, and it gives an overview of current thinking on a theme, and it does not present new experimental results. So you can write a review article even while you are conducting a different, you're engaged in some other research. Because this doesn't involve any research, you can still continue to write a paper based on literature that you have reviewed. There are so many types of review articles. So we're going to talk about them one by one with examples from published papers. So narrative literature is the most general type. You select a topic, you search the literature, you critique and reflect on the evidence and write the paper. For example, this review that was published in Medicine, Juvenile Pemphigus vulgaris, a narrative review. So basically what they did a comprehensive literature search using these various databases. Reviews follow certain guidelines. Here it's the PRISMA guidelines. There was Strobe and Consort for trials. For reviews, there are PRISMA guidelines. And independent review of titles and abstracts by authors, and qualitative analysis of the data to extract all these information, demographic, clinical, etc. Then there are scoping reviews. It is broad for searching the literature on a very specific topic. It gathers as much evidence as possible and scopes the evidence landscape and maps the discovered evidence into themes. So it is a critical appraisal of study design. And statistical analysis is not the focus. This is how you go about it. Identify the research question, which is broad. Identify relevant studies. Select the studies. Chart the data. Shift and sort it. And summarize all the results. So here's an example published in Medicine. Hearing loss in patients with Merkel-A syndrome, a scoping review. So there are specific frameworks that you need to follow. The most common being ARCSI and O'Malley framework. And no need to go into these details, but let's move on to the next one. Systematic reviews and meta-analysis. They typically club together, but let's see the difference. All meta-analysis are systematic reviews, but not all systematic reviews are meta-analysis. Both are a study of studies, but meta-analysis actually statistically combines the results of these studies to provide a more precise effect of the results. The results tend to be graphical and tabular with a narrative commentary. How do you go about doing a systematic review? You have a team and you have a systematic review protocol. Systematically search the literature, screen the results, extract the data, critically appraise it, synthesize the data, and produce a final product. In such studies, again, like with a trial, you need to pre-register it, because again, to avoid duplication, that is somebody after you may come up with that same idea and do a similar systematic review. But if it's pre-registered, then the next person will know that there is a study like this already ongoing. And again, it reduces the chances of bias. So here's an example of a systematic review and meta-analysis published in a Lippincott journal called Cornea. So all these databases were searched, random effects meta-analysis and meta-regressions were performed, stratified by the intervention and this particular characteristic. Critical review, yet another kind of review, describes an author's hypothesis or model based on key literature, demonstrates review's authority. There has to be a degree of mastery in the field to actually be able to write such a thing. And its format is like a narrative review. So here's an example: quality assessment of kidney cancer, clinical practice guidelines using this instrument, a critical review. This is the highest level of evidence. Umbrella review is a review of reviews. It is commonly conducted when there are multiple competing interventions for a condition. Again, an example: efficacy of prone positioning in awake ventilation for COVID-19, umbrella review, published in Medicine. So now that you've covered these two main types of topics, very quickly, the other parts of your research paper are citations and references. Ensure that all references have been cited and included in the reference list. Every journal has their guidelines for how to format it. Ensure that references are not cited twice. And there are reference management software like Mendeley, EndNote, etc. So even so, you should proofread that the references have been entered correctly. It's preferable to use recent, relevant references. So these are some management tools and apps. Even with Ovid, you can select a preferred style when viewing, printing, or exporting references to your citation manager. So you can try these out if you haven't tried them already. Your submission package, besides the text that you have written, includes cover letter, your title page, and these other things like tables and figures, supplementary material, etc. So always check the journal's homepage for author instructions because the format varies across journals. To reduce your chances of rejection, always read the information very carefully and don't deviate from it. Provide an engaging cover letter, captivating title, a great abstract, standalone figures and tables. Check the word count specification, very important. Check if the journal uses a template and appropriate use of language, free of errors. If you have changed your journal after a rejection or for whatever reason, please ensure that the new journal you are submitting to also, you have tailored it according to the new guidelines. This is what your cover letter should include: your title, short summary, reasons for submitting to the journal, any conflict of interest, and this basic declaration that your manuscript is original and not published anywhere else. Tables and figures include titles and legends, make them short and precise. Never present the same data and figures, tables, and text. It should be complementary. And check the journal's requirements again. These are some tools for images and artwork and for stock images as well. If you have not yet used these, you can play around with them. They're they have a very nice repository of medical images as well. Very quickly, let's also talk about ethical misconduct. A very classic example is of how misconduct leads to a breach of public trust and people then stop trusting doctors and medical information. So Andrew Wakefield, his paper that was published had a lot of inconsistencies and was rife with ethical issues. And as a result, when that came to light and his paper was retracted, people became anti-vaxxers and there was a resurgence of leases. And the repercussions to this day, we feel, where people refuse to get vaccinated because they still believe that vaccination causes autism, which was based on a flawed paper that even ended up being retracted. Remember not to obtain material without knowledge or consent. Avoid helicopter parachute research or ethics dumping, where ethics rules are different across countries, where they are very strict in countries outside India, but they lax in India. These are all essentially a repetition of what I've always said. But also, if you ever suspect misconduct, you should report it. If you're conducting animal research, adhere to ARRIVE guidelines and check the guidelines of committees. For example, in India, it's the CP-CSCA under the Ministry of Environment and Policies. So we've already gone through this. Avoid falsified data, fabricated data, fake or touched up images. In authorship, make sure that don't follow any of these practices. Ghost authorship is removing the name of a contributor. Guest authorship is naming someone who's actually not an author, but you hope that your citation will increase or chance of publication will be increased. Where you name the head of department, etc. So decide who should be an author and in what order before the research project is initiated. To avoid plagiarism, which may happen even unintentionally, when you want to use a definition or you want to use some text verbatim, enclose the text in quotation marks and insert a citation. Rewrite the words, the text in your own words. Don't change the meaning. And if you are unsure about language, use professional editing services. AI is new on the scene, and I could keep talking about how to use it responsibly, but very, very quickly, remember that AI models can make mistakes, so don't rely on the output. Always check it, verify it. Don't use it for generating references because they hallucinate. Don't put confidential information or proprietary research into these tools. So don't use it to generate someone else's unpublished work for a peer review report. Beware that there are biases in AI outputs, and it should simply be used as an assistant to augment your writing, to get ideas, but not to write an entire chapter. It can edit or structure content, but not create an entire chapter. Establish clear guidelines amongst co-authors. Stay informed about AI capabilities. So follow COPE, ICMJ, and WAIN. So WAIN, World Association for Medical Editors, has suggested authors can use AI for tasks like simple word processing tasks, generation of ideas in text, and substantive research, but not for generating text. This is something we all deal with, responding to peer reviewer comments. So I'm going to focus on major revision, minor revision, provisional accept. How do you respond to a peer reviewer? And also, sometimes what happens is you need to change your journal. So if you have suggested, you have submitted to one Lippincott journal, they may suggest another Lippincott journal, sister journals. So that is sometimes easier because the format kind of stays the same. Your response letter would look like this. You address the editor-in-chief. I would like to resubmit a manuscript, provide the manuscript ID, mention that you have incorporated all changes, and in your revised manuscript, include line numbers, highlight the parts that are changed. And then when you respond to reviewers, remember, don't get agitated. It's not a personal attack on you, so stay detached from it. Draft your responses dispassionately, be thorough, divide your comments into logical groups, and appreciate the reviewer's time and effort, because it is a time-consuming task for them. It's an unpaid job that they are doing for you. How to select journals? Very quickly, as we are running out of time. Yeah. So factors to consider when you choose a journal. Very important: the aims and scope of the journal. Article type. Does your journal accept these various types of articles that maybe you have considered to write? Applicability. Is it general? Is it specialized or super specialized? Is it global, regional, or national? Accordingly, you can choose from this plethora of relevant journals. Turnaround time, acceptance. So every journal will provide, what their acceptance rate is. So for medicine, it is 53.2%. Average time from date of submission to first decision is 28 days. So that's fairly quick turnaround. Publishing model. Is it open access, subscription-based, or hybrid? Open access. Generally, we like to choose open access because it gives you more visibility. It's freely available to all immediately. So although there is a charge to the author. So then the next point to consider would be the fee and charges. How much are the APCs? Do they waive any APCs? Or if you are funded by certain bodies, do they waive or do they pay for those APCs? So that's another thing to consider. Take advantage of special issues. Most of these journals come out with special issues, a supplemental issue. And consider a pre-submission inquiry. So that brings me to the end of the session, and I would like to take questions now. Okay. Thank you very much for your patience, everybody. Okay, we have what is the criteria to decide author's contribution and sequence or position of the authors? Harsha has asked. Very, very relevant question. Typically, the junior-most author who is leading the study, they should always be the first author. And the senior-most person who is the, PI, their name should be last. This is kind of an unwritten rule that the senior-most person, their name comes last, and the junior-most person, if they have led the study, they should be the first. After that, the order would be on the basis of contribution level of each person. So that would come from a discussion, a very open, transparent communication. All the co-authors should sit together and decide that order. And as I said, do it beforehand, because later on it can lead to very ugly situations. I hope that answers your question, Harsha. I'd also like to point out some links have been put in the chat. Please do explore them. Take a look at Lippincott's open access journals, because these can really boost your visibility and research. So when I was researching things for this slideshow, in fact, it was very easy for me to get together these material from these open access journals, because it was easily available to me. I'm not affiliated with any institute. So yes, please go ahead and check out that link. Mudassir Khan asks, please share tips for publishing qualitative studies as well, and some good journals. Qualitative studies, let me get back to you in a bit on that, because that may require a lot of time. I'll quickly, oh great, yes. So Ramya would be the best person to tell you the right journals for qualitative studies. Thanks, Ramya. A list of ophthalmology Lippincott journals, Ramya will provide you with that list. I think I showed some on my screen as well. I mean, one was cornea, I remember. And I'm sure there will be a list that Ramya can share. Qualitative studies. Any specific aspect you would like to ask about qualitative studies? What exactly are you studying? Maybe that would help me answer you better, Mudassir. Can you share insights on equivalent authorship? Very interesting question. So what people sometimes do is that they will put the author's names in alphabetical order or in no particular order. And below that, they will write in the published paper, author names in no, every author is like equal, an equal contributor. Have you ever seen that in published papers? I have come across it a couple of times. One is alphabetical, or put a little disclaimer saying that all authors contributed equally, and the authorship is like they're all considered equal. So there's no first, second author. So let me know, Snigdha, if that answers your question. Vatsalya is asking, CTRI we can use for which all purposes? I'll just share that slide so you can take a look. Provide us any guideline about authorship that you mentioned. So I'm just posting over here, COPE. So check out this particular website, Committee on Publication Ethics. So they provide details on who should be considered an author and any ethical issues related to, let me see if I can find the bit. So I would recommend that you have a look at it. Committee, sorry, not commission, Committee on Publication Ethics. So this website provides details on various aspects of authorship. Maybe I'll post it here. Okay, Harshnu is asking, can we add an author's name during revision if the already mentioned authors of the paper physically not available to conduct the experiment? It will depend on many factors, Harshnu. One is all the authors should agree. And if at revision stage, the editor and the reviewers will want to know the reason why the name was not included in the first place. So why are you suddenly adding the name so late? As long as you have a solid reason for that, it should be fine, because it's the paper still not published. It's at the revision stage. If you have a reason, you could totally add or drop names, but there has to be a valid reason. Okay, so I have conducted a qualitative study regarding transgenders. Any tips for the same? That's a very interesting topic. So as I said, Ramya will provide you with a list of write journals for this particular topic. Qualitative study tips. So make sure that your hypothesis is very clear and rooted in the literature. Your objectives should be very, very clear. So make sure that you have, those finer, PCOT and SMART attributes that I spoke about. Do your objectives and questions adhere to those? Then the design that you follow, is it, what is your sample size? Those kind of things are very important, the statistical aspects of it. Are you going to be conducting surveys? Then what, what format are you using for your surveys? An open-ended survey, things like that. First research study, it is a prospective cohort study. Can you tell me I can use for which purposes? Wait, sorry. I lost that question. I just saw one question and then I lost it. Okay, what I'm going to do, somebody asked me about CTRI, so I'm just going to put that slide back, the CTRI slide. I can't find that question, so I just thought, yeah. So I'm just putting it over here. You can take a look. And at the same time, check out the CTR website. It's very, very self-explanatory. As I said, they even have an e-tutorial. This thing. So this is what it records: your study title, investigators, sponsors, interventions, everything. And the types of studies, it includes post-marketing surveillance studies, bioavailability, bioequivalence, clinical studies that are part of your PG thesis also. All these need to be registered in CTRI. Let me see, are there any more questions? What all things should I take care while approaching a prospective cohort study? Maybe if you are okay with sharing what type of study, I mean, what is it about? And again, I'll go back to that slide on cohort studies. So it's an observational study and it's prospective. So check your inclusion and exclusion criteria, your patient, population. Define what is it that you are investigating. Any specific. I think this is Snigdha. I think I answered your question on equivalent author while manuscript submission, right? That is answered, showing up as unanswered. Okay, yeah, it is answered. So Vatsalya, you saw the CTRI slide, and you wanted anything else you want to know about what exactly are you studying in your prospective cohort studies? Then maybe I can guide you. Please suggest whether independent researcher can take authorship of the research paper if presently not affiliated. Yeah, if you're not currently affiliated, but you conducted the study while you were affiliated, you can be an author. So you can say like currently independent researcher, and then you write your former affiliation. Very often you'll see the current address, previous address. So as long as you were affiliated at the time of the study, you can be an author later on. That is not a problem, Shilpa. There's a question saying realizing. I don't know what that means. I'd like to remind all the participants there is a feedback form. It would really help if you could provide your feedback over there. It is there in the main chat. Any more questions, or if you'd like me to go back to any slide, I'm happy to do that as well. So Shilpa Rani, I hope you are okay Okay. How can we use Scopus? Simply, again, if your institution has access, it's not free, I believe. If your institution has access, then you simply go onto it and search for journals. You can search for journals, you can search for literature. I hope that helps, Vatsalya. Oh, very good question. Tips for identifying fake or predatory journals. Wonderful. You know, this topic actually needs a session entirely devoted to this particular thing. But I will tell you, there are some red flags that predatory journals have. First of all, they will promise you very, very quick publication, which will be, you know, they'll say in a few weeks, we will publish your paper. But any respectable journal, any known publisher like Lippincott will not have that. Number one. Number two, if you see the editorial board or if you see that journal information, it will have a residential address. It will have a WhatsApp number. Now compare that with any well-known, well-established publisher. You will never see Gmail. You will not see Yahoo Mail. You will see institutional emails. You will not see any WhatsApp number. So, third, and most importantly, some of these journals target you by emailing you, and those emails come in a spam box. Dear highly respected researcher, could you kindly please submit your paper to our esteemed journal? Like very flowery language in their emails, which a Lippincott journal probably would not be. And even their website, you will see it's very, very poor quality, bright flashing lights. They will always say, UGC affiliated, care list affiliated, ISSN number, which is not like what you can do as an exercise. You just open the website of a well-known journal and see whether these hallmarks are there. You will not find that. It looks very clean and clear. So these are some of those fake predatory journal features. I hope that helps. In internet, how can we identify that a particular information about some organism or food product is actually true or it is false? Okay. Totally depends on the source. So internet has all kinds of sources. Everybody is a content creator today. You know, they will start their blogs, they will start whatever, and anything you search, it will come up when you do a simple Google search, which is why your searches, when you're looking for any information on an organism or food product, focus on, you know, databases like Scopus, like Ovid, and those will provide information from peer-reviewed research. What you need to trust is peer-reviewed research and not anything that you search on the internet. Don't rely on random information on the internet. Always look at the source. Who did that research? Who were the, which journal was it published in? Is it a good quality journal? Those kind of things. So I hope that answers your question, Vatsalya. Thank you, Mudassir. Can an independent, yes, I think I already answered this, Harsha, that if you were associated before, you can, of course, you can be an author. And even if you're not, and conducting research independently while you are not affiliated, you can always publish a paper while not being an affiliated to any institute. Okay, Dr. Shobhit is saying, just to add here, there are copy websites of reputed journals. Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out. They are known as cloned journals or hijacked journals. So they actually copy even the website, the URL. There will be just one letter missing. And it is it looks very believable, but actually, if you look carefully at the URL, it is, yes, absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out, Dr. Shobhit. How to validate that the cited reference is the original research? Well, the best way is to look at that paper. Go to a database, search for that paper, and read it. And again, see where it has been published. So you'll be able to validate. The best way to validate is to read it for yourself, see it for yourself firsthand. How to decide what type of review article is to be written? So that will depend on your aim. Are you simply doing a narrative literature review? Or are you trying to find a statistical connection of causality? Then in that case, you will do a systematic review. If it's just a general review, it will be a narrative review. Again, is it a review of reviews? That's an umbrella review. So it will depend on what is it that your aim is. With AI, what do you think of the future of systematic reviews? A very valid question. And I was debating whether I should include that in the slide, but that opens a whole new can of worms. But yes, there are some very, very powerful tools, AI tools that are useful for systematic reviews. I can't remember their names, but most AI tools that help with literature search or connected papers and things like that. There is one I think called Sylvie AI for Sylvie AI is supposed to be very, very powerful for systematic reviews, and people are using them, and it is ethical again because you are using it for a research purpose, not for writing. So it will be, and it's very useful in that step of research. What are the best journals to look for microbiological studies? Ramya will provide a list, so just maybe make a note of that. Ophthalmology journal somebody wanted, and microbiological journals also. Okay. Any more questions? How can bioinformatics be used in microbiological studies? I'm not an expert at bioinformatics, but I do know that it is a very valuable tool in all fields of biology, including microbiology. It will depend on what aspect of microbiology you're studying, and this is beyond the scope that I can deal with. Sorry. But it is useful, yeah. Any other questions? So I think we managed the time fairly well, and we even addressed a lot of questions. So if there are no more questions, we can wind up. But please stay in touch. If there were questions that could not be addressed, you can reach out to me, reach out to Ramya or Vasundhara. We'll be happy to help. And I hope you all have filled the feedback form. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for being a very, very patient audience. This was a lot of information to absorb in 1 hour. I hope we meet again in another session sometime soon. And all the best for your research and writing and publication. So, yes. I think it's another question. Yes, I think slides will be provided, and we are now going to end the session. Okay. Thank you all very much.